Talking us through Swiss corporate tax reforms, we have Philippe Monnier of Monnier Business Consulting. So Philippe, what are the key characteristics of Swiss corporate tax reforms?
Okay, it's not an easy question. Let me try to emphasize 5 points. The first point is that in Switzerland, corporate taxes are relatively low for a very simple reason, is that the cost of our government is relatively low. Another characteristic is that we have federal taxes as well as cantonal or state and municipal taxes. But the most important one, they are not the federal taxes, but the cantonal/municipal taxes. The third characteristic is that the taxes vary, the rate vary from canton to canton. The fourth characteristic, which is very important, is that up to now we have special tax regime. Depending on the activity you do, you pay different tax rates. Taking the example of Geneva, ordinary tax rate for 24% on profit. If you have what is called a mixed company, very international, you only pay 11%. And if you have a real headquarter, what we call a principal company, you only pay 6 to 9%. So this is the main characteristic of the Swiss tax regime system. Last point is that we have the possibility of tax exemption, but this is not, I would say, a Swiss characteristic because most countries offer this possibility.
Okay, you mentioned those three brackets which companies might fall in depending how much tax they pay, but we hear this idea that some special rulings can be granted in some cases depending on which authorities you speak to. Is that true?
Yes, it is true. Some people say that in Switzerland you can negotiate tax, which I think is not the proper expression. The Swiss tax law actually is relatively simple. If you put all the tax law together, you may have a booklet of 500 pages. In other countries, you may have many, many more pages. It can be much more specific. So in Switzerland, if you have a new company or a new project, a new Swiss company, new foreign company, you can write a business plan. You can visit the tax authorities and you ask them, how much will I pay based on the Swiss law? Because the Swiss law is not so precise. So the tax authority will provide an answer to you, and this is called an advance binding ruling. And we can discuss the tax, but we cannot, I will not say we can negotiate.
Okay. What about this corporate tax reform? It's set to change quite dramatically, so what impact is that going to have?
Okay, we have this tax reform because the EU asked us to make a change. Of course, we are independent from the European Union, but since they are a major business partner, we cannot ignore what they think. And the major impact is that we will no longer have those special tax regime. We will have the same regime for every company. So in the case of Geneva, we had 24, 11, 6 to 9. We will have only one rate. The goal is to have 13. In practice, it may be a little bit more, maybe 14, 15, but the same tax rate on profit for every single company.
Okay, so that's one particular tax change, but what about some other key changes that could be being implemented?
I think there are a number of other changes which are not as important. One of them is that we will probably have an innovation box, which means that the profit generated by innovation, for instance patent, will be taxed at a lower rate.
Okay, but some companies that pay, say, 6% will then have to go up to 13% in all likelihood, maybe even slightly more, as you were saying there. So, I mean, are they going to stay in Switzerland?
You know, I think that the answer is probably yes, most of them, because even though we will have maybe 13, 14, 15%, it is still a very competitive tax rate compared to other European countries. And the most important thing is that tax is only one element out of many. And we have a lot of strong points. We have competent employees. We have flexible tax law. A lot of companies use a lot of suppliers, a lot of partners, work with universities. And this is, I would say, the main strength of Switzerland. And this will not disappear.
Okay, excellent. Philippe, thank you once again.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. Be sure to click back to Dukascopy TV for more updates and exclusive interviews. We'll see you next time.